Hi there, welcome back to The Everyday Artisan. I'm Jackie, and if you're new to my channel, I'm so glad you decided to join us today. If you've been here the whole time, thank you very much. Your continued support means the world to me. I am filming today in our local cemetery. We live in an old city, and it's beautiful, filled with beautiful trees and plantings and gorgeous structures around us, and on a cool autumn day, it is actually very relaxing to be in. So this week, I'd like to talk a little bit about Halloween, cemetery Halloween, and I really want to look at that halfway point between the autumn equinox and the Yuletide or winter solstice. Here we find ourselves right in between. Days are getting darker. The agrarian society on which this festival of Halloween, originally called Samhain, is based, was the final harvest of the year. At the summer solstice, we had the fruit harvest. At the autumn equinox, we had the vegetable harvest, and now we have the animal harvest. Animal harvesting can be pretty gloomy, but it was also the final harvest of the year. People were assessing, do I have everything we need to get us through the dark days ahead? And it was a time of, okay, I can make some changes, make sure we have everything set in place to survive a cold, long winter in the Northern Hemisphere. So I like to look at this Halloween holiday also as a little bit of a reflective time. Being here in the cemetery, being close to the people who have passed these lands before us, kind of causes me to pause and think, am I doing what I said I would do? Am I reaching my goals? Do I have the things in place to get me through any dark days ahead? So I find crafting to be the perfect vehicle to do these things. I've been under a little bit of stress lately because I'm getting ready for a big show and I'm needle felting, which is actually a huge stress reliever. Stabbing away at something soothes my brain, relaxes my body, and I'm able to reflect on things, making sure I have my thoughts in order to get me to the places I want to go. So this week we're going to do a 2D needle felted project, and I can't wait to show you some other techniques using needle felting and reflecting the days around us. It may be getting darker, but we can always have fun along the way. So let's get started. I like to start all my two-dimensional pictures, felted pictures, with a general sketch. This was compiled from 3 different images I found on Google. So I Googled moody silhouettes, I Googled spooky silhouettes, and I got a bunch of different things. I took these 3 images and I put them together and created this one. So we'll get going and we'll do background, then we do the moon, and then we do the silhouette on the front. So I chose a piece of thin, lightweight felt. This is wool felt that I picked up probably from a store, I think in Massachusetts, Matrushka. And I decided that I wanted the dark background. It's a little easier to felt over. And I'm going to do a moody kind of purple background. Just lay out the colors loosely on the front. When I first started needle felting, it was 2-dimensional pictures, and it was quite fun. I used a lovely little book called Magic Wool. It taught me a ton of things on how to layer the wools. And when I first was working in Waldorf School, I saw these beautiful wool pictures that the children actually could make. The teacher would make sometimes, but there would always be a basket of mishmashes of wool that the children could take and tease apart and lay upon a felted board, and they wouldn't needle felt them on, they just kind of laid them on, and it was quite lovely. Needle felting came a little later, but that's where I first was exposed to color wool pictures. I start by layering on the layers of the different colors of the purples that I have, and most of these are just from my stash. Again, doing these small pictures is really a great way to use up bits of wool, and some of this wool was just even all carded together from scraps of old wool. So it's a super nice way to use up what you have in your stash. You can see I started to change the colors as I moved downward, getting a little bit rosier and pinker. Once I have a general set all laid out, I start to needle it with the large multi-tool. And this is an optional thing. You can use this or not. And this here is the little Clover punch tool. I do recommend having one of these. You turn it over, pull the fibers onto the back, and then keep needling to neaten up your edges. So I want to make sure that I punch tool the back as well to really secure those fibers. I also like to make sure I turn my piece over every so often so it doesn't become embedded in my surface. When you are using the punch tool, never use it on a diagonal, always up and down, or else you will break your needles. That's just a little side note. Here Milo in the background, keeping an eye over everything I do. Once I was satisfied with the background, I moved on to the middle ground, and in this case it was the moon. And I started with a base of white coral wool, which is a shorter fibered wool, and it helps make a nice opaque base so that the purple doesn't show through. Once the moon is softly attached, I use my needle to kind of draw the fibers in to create a firmer line or firmer edge to this object that I'm placing on here. You want to use your needle carefully. You don't want to bend it, so just softly draw them in. Layering on a little bit of purple makes for a nice texture in the moon. If we ever look at the moon, it's not always flat white. So now cleaning up a little bit more around the edges, making it nice and strong. I decided the moon needed a little bit of sparkle, so this white wool has a bit of Angelina fiber in it, and this is something that can be purchased online easily. Now it's time to work on the foreground, the black silhouette of the branch and the crow. The black fiber that I use for the silhouette is a coral wool as well, short fibers. It felts up nice and dense, and you can see here I'm drafting it and then I am twisting it in my hands to felt it a little bit, just dry felting it with the movement of my hands. Then I break it off and I do it in small pieces, looking at my sketch every so often to keep myself on track. And then just start laying it in roughly. It's not finished in the beginning. I just kind of lay it down in the directions and in the locations that I want it to be. Drafting it out, pulling those fibers out a little longer. So I keep laying these down, softly felting them on, stretching out the fibers, placing them in the places that I want them to be. And I really like to take my time at this point, just kind of really getting the composition the way I want it to be. And I don't overthink it. I take my time, I refer to it. It will not probably end up being like the sketch that you did, but it will be close, and that's good enough. You'll notice when I lay the fibers down and then I start to felt them, I kind of pull the fibers across back and forth, kind of like creating more of a branch-like texture, and it just adds a little bit of depth to it so that when the light is reflected off of your felted painting or your felted picture, those little lumps and twists and stuff will create more dimension in the silhouette, which is quite lovely. Now that my branch is done, it's time to put the crow on. I start with the beak, tiniest little piece, and I really try to be very careful. You'll see I'm twisting the fibers, and then I carefully lay them down so that that fine beak really does show through. So just the little wispiest little bits for this part are used. The body is built up a little bit at a time, again referring back to my sketch often, or your Google image or whatever you're using, but it really makes it easy. I only use little bits of chunks, and I'm kind of checking on the outline of it as I go along, and then adding the little detaily parts like the points and the edges. And every so often I do use my punch tool to kind of make sure that it is opaque. This is a silhouette, so I want to make sure my black is truly opaque. At this point in the process, it's all the little details, so I'm really twisting tiny fibers, just a few wisps at a time, to make the littlest twigs, and then I'll be making the little leaves, and you can see a lot of little twisting going on. Sometimes my fingers get a little bit dried out, and I use this nice balm on my fingers to keep them nice and tender and moist. The leaves are super simple, just pulling off little lengths of the wool and putting them on in little tiny shapes. It was quite fun to do this part. And I finish up just with the tiniest little details, making sure all my fibers are in the directions that I want them to be. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you give this project a try. And it can be really any subject matter, any type of background colors that you choose. Enjoy!